Welcome to Real Talk with Sarah. I'm your host, Sarah Roberts, and in this episode, we are tackling a topic that's affecting a growing number of individuals and families: food allergies. Not long ago, PB&J was a staple in lunch bags across North America, and yet over the last several years, we've seen more and more children and adults get diagnosed with peanut, tree nut, dairy, gluten, egg, shellfish, and many other allergies and sensitivities. And they're showing up not only in obvious reactions, but in more subtle ones as well. Why the upswing? Is it simply a result of population growth, an increase in genetically modified foods, a greater toxic load on our systems? Or are we simply more aware of allergies today and hence able to diagnose them more readily? To help us uncover what's really going on, I've got nutritional consultant and owner of Living Science Wellness Center, Bruce Bonner, with me to help us understand the issue better. And later, I'll have holistic nutritionist Lori Preshing, founder of Allergies and Me, to share her personal story of food allergies from diagnosis all the way to how she came to do the work she's doing today. So here we go. Episode 16 of Real Talk with Sarah starts right now. Well, this is a topic I've wanted to explore for a while, and now feels like the perfect time to dig in. With the research showing over 1 in 13 Canadians suffering with food allergies, now is the time to learn more in order to support ourselves and our children. I've got nutritional consultant Bruce Bonner here to help us wade through the noise and get to the bottom of things. Welcome, Bruce.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on and being willing to share your expertise, because I know a lot of people come to you wondering what is going on, what's happening with their health. I want to know why the upswing. I mean, we're seeing 1 in 13 Canadians with allergies, more with sensitivities. What's going on?
Well, I think, and I've been practicing for over 20 years, and you can just see it slowly increasing at all ages. And I do think probably the diagnostics are, people talk about we're better at the diagnostics, so I think that is important. I think the acceptance is something that is slowly on the upswing too, where people are looking for their diet is becoming top of mind. And I think part of that is realizing we have issues with our food, and whether it's chemicals like extra pesticides, herbicides. I mean, many of our foods are pretty overladen with chemicals, yeah. And that's quite acknowledged. There's groups like the Environmental Work Group and so forth, watchdog groups of scientists taking a look and saying like what's happening to us in the environment in general, but also then the food as an integrated ecosystem. So I think there are that's part of it, like the overburdening of the body with stuff that's not supposed to be there.
Wow, so the toxins in the food, the pesticides, the herbicides, these things are being ingested with the food, right. And our bodies are just not set up to be able to deal with them.
Yeah, we're overburdened. They're looking at things like that. I mean, there are scientists around the world, they're checking things like amniotic fluid, and they're saying, okay, well, every baby has a huge number of chemicals proven in the amniotic fluid. So I mean, if you're seeing that in vitro, or in vivo, like in the body, then you're sitting there thinking, well, somebody's doing a lot of critical thinking. There's a lot of amazing scientists around the world that are looking at this kind of stuff, and we just have, you see a lot of children always sneezing, coughing, they have different skin rashes. There's a whole bunch of things that are going on that are responsible for the immune dysfunction. And so I think that are signs of immune dysfunction, and so what's responsible, like what's changed over 100 years.
So you started touching on some of those symptoms, and I think runny nose is not necessarily something I think most of us would associate with a food intolerance. Right. I think we have a sinus issue.
Right.
So tell us some of the more common symptoms of a food allergy if we're at home wondering, do we have a sensitivity or an allergy, and then maybe some of these less common ones as well.
So the allergy part is well documented. You get like anaphylaxis, hives, very overt things that happen within immediately up to maybe a few hours ingestion. So you definitely would like have someone to look at that to confirm. A standard allergist does a great job. They can check and see what you're responding to.
So you're saying you eat something, you get, your throat starts to close up, serious reaction, that's an allergy.
Right.
Yeah.
And in the intolerance world, which is slowly being discovered, is things that are anywhere from, 12, 24 up to like 48 or longer out. This response, it's a slow process, and it's not as obvious, life-threatening. problematic though, and then oftentimes you don't associate it with the thing you ate like 2 or 3 days ago.
Right.
And sometimes people, it can even be, they're not even having a big issue with it, but maybe it's a mild intolerance. Their body, when it's healthy and they feel good, they're not stressed, they have everything going for them, can totally tolerate it. But say they're in a stressful state, busy at work, whatever's happening, weakening their system, and they have that item like 4 times that day, then it's really just a sheer amount of overwhelming the body. It's like, a drop of water in the bucket. If it gets to the point where it's full, then you add more, it overflows. The overflowing, and then the body gives you cues or symptoms that all is not well. That's your symptom. I mean, the body is brilliant, right? Symptom's not something to be constantly squished and suppressed. You can do it short term, but really, your body is giving a reason.
I think that's such an important point to make, that our bodies are always talking to us.
Yeah.
It's our responsibility to listen, but it's really hard to listen, especially if we're not equating what we're eating with how we're feeling.
Right.
We don't put that together. But you were saying before we jumped in these seats, you were saying we consume 2 to 5 pounds of food every day.
Sure.
So of course there might be an issue with something that we're eating.
Yeah, I would just say to people, like, get into the mindset of possibility that if it's intimately connected to your small intestinal lining, that's where we absorb everything, and you're eating 2 to 5 pounds a day. Like, the logical person would say, how could it not be a possibility, really?
Yeah.
But we're just taught not to think that food could be a problem. It's always something outside of us, or some weird genetic thing, and that can be part of it. Like, some people just have a genetic predisposition in their families that don't do well, and you see anaphylactic to lobster or peanut or something all the time. But I would say a lot of things for us are just intolerances, and you want to make sure you can, number one, acknowledge it. And if that's a possibility, then you also have the control. If something is an offending item or you suspect it, why not just eliminate it for a few weeks to a month and just get the protein complexes cleared from the bloodstream, so then the immune system calms down, and do your own investigative work. You own your body, you know it better than anybody. So why not, take a look? If you cut something out for a few weeks, you're not going to die of malnutrition. In fact, if it's a problem, you're actually going to do yourself a service and feel amazing, because you will absorb more from the other good foods you're eating. Because if you have constant digestive irritation and the inflammation in the immune system is going off the hook, then you actually won't absorb the good nutrition you're consuming in the first place.
So what you're saying is, if I am gluten intolerant but don't know it, or I have a sensitivity to gluten, so anything with wheat, rye, barley, and every time I eat these things, I feel bloated, I'm gassy, I'm uncomfortable, maybe I'm moody. Removing that from my diet for a couple of weeks is kind of the first line of defense. We just say, if we think that might be what it is. So I guess the first line would be start to track.
Absolutely.
Right?
It's a great idea.
Yeah, so start writing down everything that we're eting and then tracking how we're feeling afterwards.
Yeah, check how you feel. I mean, people will say my nose running, skin rashes, bowel habit. There's so many things, headaches. You can chart whatever symptoms you want or what's pertinent to you. And then process of elimination, and it's a little laborious, but hey, that's empowering. I think then you're not coming to any practitioner right away, and I like clients that come to see me that are doing that, because then you can get resolution quicker if they needed extra help. If a person's coming in already tracking, ready to go, you can save yourself time and money, because you're coming in already.
Honestly, you're already, like you say, you're empowered.
Yeah.
You're coming in with information.
Absolutely.
I find a lot of doctors, nothing against modern medicine, but I find that a lot of times it's a Band-Aid solution. It's an allergy shot, or it's something to just kind of deal with the symptoms. And what I like about what you do is you're really getting underneath. You're getting to the root cause of why is this allergy here? And then, so is it possible to heal the gut by eliminating the food that's bothering us? We get rid of it for a time. Is it possible that we can reintroduce that food?
I think so. I think that one of the intolerance problems, as you talked at the beginning, I think that it's because our bodies have become weaker and weaker and more dysfunctional, and a lot of it has to do with the lining of the intestine, which is the barrier between the outside world. Even though your intestinal tract is inside your body, it's technically outside. It has to cross the intestinal lining to get into the bloodstream to become nourishment. So if you had like a rubber glove and you stuck it in water, it's in the water, but it's not really in the water, right? There's a barrier there. So think of it that way.
Yeah.
So then the food has to cross that lining in order to become nourishment. So if you have dysfunction in the lining of the small intestine specifically, then things are leaking into the bloodstream, and your immune system is recognizing that as a foreign invader. It's not supposed to be there, it's too big, and then it sees it, so then you muster up a natural reaction, an immune reaction. And so inflammation is part of an immune reaction. So heat, redness, swelling, inflammation are all part of the immune reaction. Your body wants to do that. It's part of sequestering off areas that need to be protected. It's all involved. It's only becoming problematic when it's ongoing. So people are constantly, like you mentioned, maybe it's gluten. If you're constantly eating that, and you're firing off this natural reaction, but it's out of time constantly, and it's all day. Your body wasn't actually designed to keep doing that either. So that weakens your system. You use up vitamins, minerals, protein, everything that you require to make things function. So you start running low bank account. We'll think vitamins, minerals like cash. You're running low bank account, and you're bringing in something that's constantly causing too much spending.
Yes.
So then over time, weeks, months, years, you're just doing this.
Yeah.
So then if you want to heal it, if you remove the offending item, but you also stockpile the body with key nutrients to bring more cash in, your body has a brilliance. It knows how to start to heal. So a lot of people can overcome those intolerances. They start getting their digestive system nice and strong, their immune system strong, and that way you can actually go out and have something, or if it's in food and it was before a problem, and it's something that's hidden, egg or something in a piece of cake, or and you can't, and even if it's a gluten-free cake, you're like, oh my God, I can't tolerate it. People find, wow, I can actually tolerate that stuff, and my immune system isn't where it's supposed to be. So I do believe people can heal from things. Anaphylactic reaction is a total different story. There's something genetic and inborn. I do believe, though, you can lessen a person's severity, so you can empower a person to make them really strong, and then a parent doesn't have to be so worried about 1 part per trillion causing their child to have to go to the hospital. We don't talk enough about that. I think you can actually make them very strong and lessen that anaphylactic tendency too.
I think we really need to talk about that. I think that's a huge issue.
Big.
Because even just from a peace of mind perspective,
Yeah.
parents that are raising children with these anaphylactic allergies,
it's very tough.
putting them out into the world, it must be so terrifying.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's already, I'm not a parent, but I know it's always terrifying to send your kids out in the world with peanuts out there and all those other things that they might be allergic to. So scary.
And the other part to that is that you're basically creating stress. Right. And that shuts your immune system down, so then you create a vicious cycle.
Oh my gosh, well, we're going to keep talking more with Bruce after the break. Back in a moment. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, I've got Bruce Bonner with me talking about food allergies. So before the break, we were talking about empowerment and how we can really become empowered through knowing what's going on with our bodies when we're eating, and then how we're feeling afterwards. I'm curious, can a pregnant mother-to-be do anything to prevent her baby being born with sensitivities or allergies?
Well, first acknowledge, if you're a mom-to-be, if you have your own intolerances, and then you would find that out and lessen the exposure, because you can pass that on. Typically when 2 parents get together, the incidence of intolerance / allergy goes up significantly. So then the child is starting out a bit of a deficit. So then I'd say learn, discover your own intolerances, and then be mindful and maybe eliminate some of those things, lessen them, find some good nutritional solutions, and there are a ton out there. If a person has a dairy intolerance, this is common for pregnant moms, and they know they can't tolerate dairy, but they're recommended, calcium for bones and all this stuff, which is great. There are other options out there, because again, if you can't digest and absorb it, it doesn't matter technically how amazing the food is for you. If you don't get it into, it's useless, right? It can cause more problems.
So you're saying that we can be eating foods that are highly nutritious, but not absorbing any of those nutrients because we have such damage done to our gut?
Yeah, that's a big part of it. Yeah. So then there are lots of options, and then they say heal and seal get the gut to heal and seal. Take time, remove the offending items, use some key nutrients. There's probiotics, there's special supplements that we use, and just let the body heal itself. You know, the gut lining renews itself every 3 to 5 days. Actually, it's a high turnover rate.
Wow.
So then then if you have damage to the small intestinal lining, that's where people, like you mentioned, gluten intolerance, celiac would be an extreme. The small intestine's like flattened. It's like shag carpet, the lining of the small intestine,
okay.
and it's like too flattened, so you're not absorbing nutrients. They pass through, you know, your malabsorption. So you want to get that to heal. So it takes some time. That can take longer, months to years. But if you think about it, you can get your body to heal. And so then if you're a pregnant mother, you can certainly address so many things and then lessen the option for your child to have any allergies. Plus, eating a nutritious diet makes the child's immune system, gut, everything super awesome and healthy.
Yeah.
Right? So you really make it bulletproof.
Yeah, I know that, you know, and I'm not a mom, and so I'm not pointing fingers, but I know so many moms will say, you know, they just have such junk food cravings while they're pregnant, and I understand those cravings, but it's, you know, part of the work is, you know, maybe moving those, you know, cravings aside and doing what we need to do to have a
See
healthy.
why the cravings are there.
So that's another thing, and why I really love what you do and the work that you do is you really are going underneath. You're getting to the root causes. So speaking of cravings, we can crave a food that we have an intolerance to, right?
Usually because you're getting an adrenaline reaction. And so when the body is constantly consuming something that's irritating, your body has defense mechanisms and can fire it up. You can see it in children a lot. You know, a child that starts craving a lot of food and they have a lot of natural battery charge, you know, they're ready to go. So they have milk or something, they're begging their mother for everything, you know, almost every minute. So they know they're getting like a physiological hit. And so they're firing off the adrenaline and you get this surge of energy and you feel great and euphoric for a short period of time. And then when it starts coming down the other side of the mountain, what do? You crave it again.
You crash and then you crave it again.
Yeah, so that adrenaline rush is a big thing. And sometimes even like dopamine, serotonin, the feel-good neurotransmitters also can be activated. So then there's other things going on. It's very complex. I don't even think we understand it all, but those are some of the options. And you can see why a person then gets that, you know, the need.
The need to satisfy that craving.
Yeah, and that's why they have to clear it.
That's interesting that not only are we seeing allergenic effects like runny nose, rashes, eczema, you know, tummy upset, but, you know, other not so obvious ones as well. Amazing. Yeah. What's the biggest thing you see in your work as far as the foods that are the most allergenic, if you will? What are people coming in most often for?
Well, I would say, you know, your top 5, you know, things like that are in every food now: corn, soy, dairy, like milk more than even, like sometimes people can tolerate yogurt even because it's got probiotics. But I would say those are your dairy, soy, corn, big offenders, the things that are in everything. And then gluten, of course, is in everything. But that's part of the reason why we've developed all these things over the last 30, 40, 50 years or more. You're using the same product in everything. It may look different, but it's the same thing, whether it's a hot dog bun, a cracker, a cookie, a muffin. I mean, it's the same material.
It's the corn and the soy.
So it's in everything. So because we have these big crops and it's helpful, you don't want everyone starving. It's just that when people eat maybe 10 different foods, they actually don't, they think they're eating it like 20, 30, 40, but really it's like 7 to 10. Look at the average child's diet. There's not much going on there.
It's really unfortunate to see the average child's diet, isn't it?
So those things start to wear on you. That's more and more.
Yeah.
And then as you become nutrient deficient, because those aren't bringing as many complex nutrients, vitamins, minerals, just takes a few years to constantly just start tipping the balance.
And it's funny how I think that our brains would work the opposite. We would think that the more we eat something, the more tolerance we would build up towards that. But the opposite is true in this case.
Right. Tolerance can be created with tiny amounts, eaten more consistently, and that's often recommended, but not like high amounts.
Okay.
So like tiny amounts of something can be immunostimulatory, can give you a little boost, and that's where they say if you have a dairy allergy and you had just a little bit, there's actually a thought that even they do injections of serums under the skin to help balance the immune system, and that's done by a medical professional. There's a thought that you can get things to balance itself out. So I think, but not every day, 6, 7, 8 sandwiches, 10 muffins, you just keep inundating. That's a sledgehammer effect.
I want to ask your opinion on dairy on corn and on soy. Are those foods that you allow into your diet? What are your thoughts on them?
I would say that the genetically modified piece of the puzzle, which a lot of people are questioning, gets factored into like corn and soy. And I would say that over pasteurization, over skimming, over just changing milk in the last number of years, it's well intentioned, it's creating it to be less able to be digested. So I don't think any food is inherently evil. I think it has a lot to do with how are we processing it, how are we growing it. Soy, you could make soy and in a nut, like just even an organic soybean, and dehydrate it, and that would cause digestive imbalance. But if you ate it in miso soup, it's been fermented, it has probiotics, like it's a whole process, and that's thousands of years old, and that becomes like a superfood, right? So I think there's lots of things, and people just black and white or blanket statement foods, and I think though, just the sheer preponderance of how it is, how it's made, and how much you're consuming can create the issue.
Honestly, I can only imagine how interesting your work is, because every case is unique, but you're also seeing some of these patterns that help you quickly diagnose and get to the bottom of things. So tell us, what about for parents that, we kind of touched on it earlier, are almost paranoid, scared, afraid if their child does have an allergy? What's the first step? I know we talked about this elimination diet, coming to someone like you to get to the bottom of it. What are the first steps that parents should take?
Well, number one is the acknowledgement that that's a possibility, so that empowers a person. And learn yourself, like what foods are other options. And I would say that using some probiotics, good probiotics, usually from a supplement standpoint, but also even fermented vegetables. There's a lot of different foods out there that you can get to really get the digestive system to heal itself and make the immune system so robust that even if you have a genetic predisposition to something, your body has the ability to push back. Most of the children don't have that capability, and then you're even more worried about a little speck here or there, go to a birthday party or whatever happens. I would say that stress, excess stress, is immune suppressing. So now you're suppressing the child and your own immune system because you're in constant state of stress. It's a well-documented phenomenon. And so then the more empowered you are, the more relaxed you are, your body actually can tolerate things more readily. So if you think of it that way, there's different stages of actually making yourself better.
Wow, I think that we don't put enough stock into what stress does to the body. As from a digestive perspective, I really don't think that enough of us, even though I think so many of us can be under stress and our tummies hurt. Like we understand it from that perspective, but we don't go deeper.
It's probably like a whole other show.
I think it's a whole other show for sure. Oh my goodness. So when it comes to coverage, we're here in Ontario. What is covered for parents who are watching this and saying, okay, I think my little child is struggling. I'd like to take them to get some help. What's covered? Well,
so you go to your family physician. Standard allergy can be tested. If it's warranted, typically your medical doctor can even requisition the IgG antibody. That's the delayed food intolerance test through different, the main lab is Dynacare. So you can talk to your physician, just it has to be warranted typically. And then if you go to a naturopathic doctor or nutritionist, you can get those done for sure. And oftentimes for coverage, extended benefits under many of the major insurance companies cover naturopath and nutrition. You just have to check with your policy.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad to know that there is that kind of support for parents, because it's a scary thing. Tell us, how can people find you and learn more?
Living Science Wellness Center is our clinic. We have a multidisciplinary clinic, so livingscience.ca, and come and see who you would like to work with. We have a lot of great practitioners. And we look forward to helping everyone. Oh, well, you do amazing work, and we're just so grateful to have you right here in this city. But I know people watch the show from all over, so I think it's important to know that we really can take our health into our own hands. Absolutely. Pay attention, just paying more attention. And like you really have stressed today, choosing real whole foods, making that sort of real focus of our diet, and then the rest of it can be little bits, but not the whole diet. Yeah, it's true. Well, thank you so much for being here, Bruce. My pleasure. You've certainly helped us understand this issue a lot better. When we come back, I'll have holistic nutritionist Lori Preshing with me to share her inspirational story. Back in a moment.
Welcome back to Real Talk. If you're just joining us, we're talking food allergies on this show, and I've got holistic nutritionist Lori Preshing with me, sharing her amazing story of hope and transformation. Welcome, Lori.
Thank you so much for having me, Sarah.
This was not even a question about who was going to be on this show. It was Bruce and it was you, because your story is amazing. So take us back 12 years ago, even take us back 13, 14 years ago. I'd like to know what your life looked like then, and then walk us through to bringing it all full circle into what you're doing today.
Okay.
Yeah, tall order.
I know. Well, if you rewind the clock back before children, whoosh, yeah, health not great, diet even worse. So we were the generation where you're just raised on Pop-Tarts and Pizza Pockets and, KD, Kraft Dinner. You thought nothing of it. It was all, just out at the time, and just, gosh, gastro, headaches. I went through migraines, horrible, horrible.
So did you know yourself that you were dealing with food intolerances?
Nope.
You just lived with headaches and feeling kind of crummy, and you just thought that was just part of the way you felt?
Yeah. Well, back then, on top of it, I learned I was lactose intolerant, diagnosed, and so I just steered clear of that, but I had no idea of all other things.
Okay.
And then come to the point where you have children, it is a tax on the body. I went through a really rough patch.
Like during pregnancy was a rough?
No, afterwards, okay. I kind of tanked. You don't realize that it takes all the nutrients from your body to just produce this little being, and I just tanked. Insomnia, I didn't know what was going on. So back at that time, that's originally when I found my nutritionist, Bruce Bonner, and he totally set me on a different path. He brought me just knowledge and everything that I started to know. And then when the kids started, oh my gosh, okay, so they were about 4 or 5. And we were dealing with all kinds of things. 2 boys.
4 and 5 years old at the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So, again, diet, horrific, but you don't relate. You don't think these things.
So you were eliminating dairy, but you were still keeping Pizza Pockets and Kraft Dinner in the...
No,
okay.
We ate out a lot. We cooked a little bit at home. I was not a great cook back then. Yeah, we did eat out a lot, and a lot of processed things, quick and easy grab, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And no, they were having full dairy. What I didn't know is that they had inherited that aspect from me. Okay. So we dealt with all kinds of things like gastro, random stomach pains, rashes popping out, eczema nonstop, dark circles under the eyes, bright red cheeks, hyperactivity like crazy, and then the sleep. Oh my God, the sleep. On any given night, either one of them would be waking up and be up for hours, hyperactive, keeping us awake. So we were like, we can't go on like this. This is just, we were exhausted. Mm-hmm. So we started looking for answers. Like, what is going on? What are all these things? I had no idea that it was all related. And we just couldn't find answers. And then again, I found Bruce, and I don't know what's going on in one of our appointments. And he's like, you should do this food allergy test. And I'm like, we don't have food allergies in our family. We don't have allergies. I trusted him, took that step, and when we got the results, it was like a lightning bolt. So all the foods that they were eating, the gluten, the dairy, even like things like pineapples and potatoes were like going off the charts on this test.
So what kind of test was it that you had done with your children?
So it's a blood food allergy test that tests your IgGs, the antibodies that measure, what you're tolerating and what you're not, because as your immune system mounts, it'll just start to react to all these foods that you're eating day and day and day.
So the kids get blood drawn, anyone that's getting tested gets their blood drawn, yeah. And then it gets checked against how many different foods, like every food imaginable?
Every food, it was 2 pages long.
Wow.
It was like every food imaginable, fruits, vegetables, everything. So.
And you were seeing that your boys were off the charts on dairy, on gluten, on nuts, on pineapple, potatoes,
yeah.
Random foods.
Yeah, that was my oldest. We did him first, and we were like, what is this? And then again, you go into the pantry and you're like, now what do I feed my child? These are all foods that he's eating today. It's overwhelming, it's daunting. I stood in the pantry in tears. I was just like, what do I do now? So you allow yourself that fine, go to bed. Tomorrow you just get up and you take a step, and that's it. Okay, we are going to start learning, and we are going to remove that. Like pineapple, for example. Pineapple was the strongest, and he was eating it every day. Like
so that's interesting. Like Bruce was saying, you can really start to crave the foods that you're allergic to.
He was a Tasmanian devil. That's what we would call him. He
After
would eat
eating pineapple?
Yeah, but we didn't correlate. He was eating it, like, ask for it all the time. Run around. He wouldn't even stay still to watch a movie. I remember that. He would just run all around. So pineapple, he was eating all the time, wanted it, craved it, had to go. Yeah. And that was our first step. It was like, okay, this is gone. Clearly it's hurting him. And by the next week, he was a completely different child.
Wow. And how hard was it for you as a parent to say to your 4-year-old, or how old was he at the time?
Yeah, he was 5.
5. We're not going to be having, how do you lay that out for a 5-year-old who is craving this food?
Yeah. And he didn't understand, so I was like, no. And I just slowly, you know what, that's not good for you and it's hurting you. So no, we are not going to have pineapple in the house anymore, and here, have an apple instead, or let's try pears. And I would just kept introducing these different fruits to him, and it took a day or two, like, of him wanting it. But no, then he quickly, moved. He's like, okay, no, I like pears, and then even like green peppers, red peppers. Like, he discovered new things that he liked. But the next week, the hyperactivity was gone. Taz was gone. Yeah, and then we were on to something, and that was our first step. And then dairy, and then gluten, and then all these things, step by step.
So step by step, you started eliminating foods. And so were you using a journal to track? Yeah.
That is one of the biggest keys that saved my life many, many times back then. It was just write down, okay, he's starting to react. What did he have? What did he have yesterday? And you correlate. You can really see as you move, even just glancing back a month at a time, you can correlate and you can see a trend saying, every time I have that, I have a headache. Yeah.
That's amazing. I really think that that's the first line of defense for parents. It's to really just start to track. I think for anybody, in the work that I do, I'm always sharing with people, write it down, because we can forget. We don't think of what we ate 2 hours ago and how it can relate to our runny nose or our eczema the next day or later.
I once helped a client, and she had these random migraines, and she was just getting them, and they were just horrible, like 24 hours to recover. And I'm like, you know what, just track. Every time you have one, just write it on a calendar, and what did you eat 24 hours later? At the end of the month, she called me and she went, Lori, onions.
Onions.
Every time she had onions, 24 hours later, boom, migraine. Phenomenal. Like, who would have thought that, right? But she found it, cut out onions, and they didn't come back.
So we can literally be sensitive or allergic to anything.
That's what I've learned.
That's what you've learned. Yeah. So look at your life now. I mean, talk about night and day. Kind of reminds, we were talking earlier, my story, where people will say to me, you used to be a drinker and a smoker and a junk food eater. It's like, yes, people can change.
Yeah,
they
and
really
what
can.
A journey, my God.
Yeah.
The children, my boys have just taught me. Like a couple of years later, my youngest started having all these completely different symptoms. His were insomnia and like totally gastro. So again, on a lark, food allergy test. Same food allergies as his brother, completely different symptoms, and they're brothers.
Interesting, but same allergies.
Same.
Which kind of makes it easier for you as the mom, and I'm sure your husband, because no one wants to be a short order cook, right? I mean, how do you deal with, so now your work is helping people, using your mess, turning it into your message. You now help people, navigate their way through. Is that something that you recommend? If pineapple is the allergy, we don't have pineapple in the home.
Yeah.
We don't let the rest of the family eat it when the one can't. Is that a strategy?
Totally. Is a total opportunity for learning. So when my oldest it was just him, we would make just one meal and then we would all eat the same. But by the time my youngest, it was like being hit over the head, like change the whole family. And that's the message that I try to share, is that don't have it in the house. Because I've heard like 10-year-olds, even they break into the pantry and they start scarfing Cheerios and their moms are like, what is that? And they're like addicted to this food.
Yeah.
So no, try, you learn through them. And our own journey as well. My husband and myself, like my IBD has improved, my headaches are gone, my husband's energy and sleep is better. We all started eating this way. It's just learn one step at a time. What are they doing to the foods? How are they processing it? How am I reacting to those foods? And then, you don't learn back. You can't unlearn this stuff, right? So one step you take, you just don't go back.
I really appreciate the approach that you take, really looking at the diagnoses as opportunities for growth. And I think that a lot of us get news like this, or any kind of news in our lives that we don't want. No one wants to be allergic to foods, but I almost feel like it's kind of the canary in the coal mine situation. Like, our people that are experiencing these food allergies, they're really kind of leading the charge in showing us this is what's going on with our food supply. And because they're being triggered by them, I feel like it's making the rest of us take notice about the way we feel with gluten and nuts and different things and dairy that are extremely allergenic for a lot of people. Soy, corn, that kind of thing.
Yes, for sure.
I feel like they're real teachers.
I work with a lot of allergy groups out there, and it's amazing because when you first have that diagnosis, it can be really isolating and daunting, and you don't know what's going on. And as you start to move forward, but finding a community, there's so many, even local people that I've met, they're just amazing, that are willing to share their stories, share their resources, just recipes and tips on how to get through, especially kids, picky eaters, all these things, but just to lend each other support. So that's where I've learned to really just pull from when I need to.
I think that's such a key piece. I think community and feeling not alone is something that's so important to me and to so many, that whenever we do get something, when we're diagnosed or if we're going through an experience, knowing that we have other people that have gone through it too, that we can learn from, that we can start to see around corners, it feels so much more reassuring and less scary, for sure. So thank you for all the work you do. All right, so after the break, Lori's going to share some of her favorite breakfast and snack ideas that omit the most common allergens. Back in a moment. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, we're talking food allergies on this show, and I've got holistic nutritionist Lori Preshing with me, sharing some yummy allergy-free food ideas. So let's start with smoothie bowls, because your big deal is breakfast, right? That's one of the issues that you get most when people come to your practice.
Breakfast is actually one of the hardest meals of the day. And I mean, who says it has to be like some starchy carb or full of sugar, right? So protein is so important. I've learned that the hard way through the boys. So smoothie bowls is one of the first things I always get my clients on. You can make them as thin, like anyone who has a blender, right? Yeah. Blender is your best friend. Berries, bananas, bit of juice. You can make it as thick or as thin as you want. So, you can make it a juice, or you can make it a nice, beautiful bowl and then just load it with nuts and berries, coconut, anything you want.
Yeah, well, we're showing some on screen right now, and they are so gorgeous, I don't even know if I'd want to eat them. So it's basically taking a smoothie and pouring it into a bowl so that we're actually using a spoon and chewing a little bit more.
That's exactly it. So if you literally throw a ripe avocado or a banana into that, and it'll just thicken right up beautifully. A couple of dates, and it's naturally sweet, no sugar, that's the base. And then you just throw whatever you have on hand on top. I've learned to make all different kinds over the years.
And I bet you a lot of kids really get into making them too, right?
Yes, you can make them all different kinds of colors if you have those superfood powders, or if they love berries or whatever their fruit of the moment is, they can go for that.
So fun. They're so colorful. They're just beautiful. They're almost too pretty to eat. Okay, we got to move through this stuff. So what am I looking at here? I've got all these molds in front of me.
I brought them in because they rescued me. These become your best friend in the kitchen, because my age-old brownie recipe, it's made with black bean brownies. You throw it in this, and there you got donuts.
Oh my gosh, donuts.
If you take a pancake mix, you throw it in there, you've got bagels.
Yes.
And gluten-free, you can make them whatever your allergen is. Same thing for these other molds. Anyone who's gluten-free knows that it's really hard to make a gluten-free waffle with a waffle maker. They're so fragile.
Okay, let's look at those.
When I found that, I literally screamed.
We get excited easily around here.
We could have waffles again. So I literally take my pancake mix, throw it in there, bake in there, we've got waffles again.
Wow, wait, I don't know if we can quite catch that. So where do we get these kinds of molds?
You can either order them online. I've gone to like Epicure parties, that kind of thing. So, but yeah, online you can find anything.
And they're made of silicone.
Yep.
So they just pop out easily.
Yeah, and they just go into the oven. Yep.
These look like candies.
Yeah, so what I do with these is we call them fudge. So I melt dark chocolate and I add peanut butter, any kind of like maca, chia, any kind of superfood in there, melt it all down, throw it in there, throw it in the freezer, and we've got fudge.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I put them in just little mini muffin tins, but these are even cuter. I love it. So you were talking about breakfast a moment ago, and I just didn't want to pass by this.
Yes.
The need for protein in the morning. So you're saying instead of a starchy breakfast like a bagel, a muffin, a cookie, whatever, cereal, something like this, like a hot cereal.
That's old-fashioned porridge. Just going back to that, even like taking brown rice and it's very, very cooked a lot till it's soft, it's the same thing. You can put nuts, seeds, berries, coconut, even drizzled dark chocolate on top. You can change it up every time. But when they have protein in the morning, they are so even tempered, concentration, mood, focus, all that. You learn it for yourself too, right? I'm at my best.
Well, exactly. I just love whenever we get to have a conversation together, because what's good for us and what's good for our kids, it's the same thing. These are all the same bodies. In fact, sometimes when I look at the sugar in breakfast cereals and different things, I'm thinking, I couldn't even have that much sugar first thing in the day. How can these little tiny developing people have to, try to tolerate all of that? All right, so what about snacks? I know that's a big thing for so many parents, where it's, my child can't have nuts, and now we can't even take peanuts and different tree nuts to school. What are the alternatives for snacks?
So true, and it's so ironic because nuts are the ultimate snack, right? You got everything, fat, fiber, nutrients, everything.
They're the best.
Just because you can't have nuts doesn't mean you can't have seeds. So that's definitely a backup. Even dried fruits, things like that, sesame snacks, even the made good seaweed, and then I've started making my own energy balls. My sons now love that. They have this salty tooth. I know.
It's funny because it's seaweed, and I think a lot of people would think that that would not be something that would be tasty. But it's kind of an acquired taste, isn't it?
If you want to go off chips, there's your go-to, because it's salty, it's crunchy, it's crackly, it's wonderful.
Yeah, and it's delicious. And what do you think about these snack bars?
Oh boy. Okay, so it's tough because when your children are young, they're looking at what their peers are eating, right? And they want the same thing. So that was my backup. They're really high in sugar, but you know what? In a pinch, if I can't make anything or make my own, I will go for that. Actually, my in-laws came over and they're like, "Can we have some of those again?" Because they didn't taste like factory,
Nice.
They really like those, but in a pinch. And if you want them to have something, or they start complaining, "Oh, my friends are all eating that and I want to eat the same," you can find other equivalents.
Well, and I think that's it. I think it's, kind of getting it down to where they're still feeling like they're part of their peer group, that they're not so ostracized because their diet is so completely different. But what I'm loving and hoping for is that more families are dealing with this, so that it's going to naturally create an opportunity for more whole foods in lunches. Fewer of these easy, snacky, lunchable ideas, and more real whole foods. But I think what you're saying with starting them first thing in the day with a really high protein breakfast is such a key. So talk to us about the Bob's gluten-free baking flour, this 1-to-1.
I always send my clients to Bob's. He has literally, there's a whole shelf in the store. Anything Bob's is great. He has any kind of allergen you need cut out, he will have. But this is good in a pinch too. If you're just new to gluten-free baking and you need to go to a mix, it's really hard to just take one flour like rice or coconut and substitute it for wheat. You can't. You need a blend to kind of mimic what it does and rise. So no, that would be my backup go-to.
So this can just be used 1-for-1 in any recipe that's calling for regular flour. We can use this one instead.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So nuts, seeds, what are these guys?
These are what we call truffles. My son calls them truffles at home, and they're literally.
Can we see those? I think we're getting them overhead. There we go. Yeah.
They're literally, and again, food processor blender, your best friend. They're dates, almond butter, cocoa butter, cocoa powder, and then coconut, some ground nuts in there, and there you go. You just mix them up, put them in the freezer.
Yum.
Yeah,
I mean, these are things that, it's so funny when you're talking about these foods, they're delicious, real whole foods, and we really can change our taste buds, can't we? Where when we get used to eating processed, refined foods, that's all that tastes good. And so real whole foods really don't taste good for a while until they do.
That's exactly.
And honestly, going back to trying to eat junk foods again, that's where, right? Could you even imagine? And what about your boys now? So they're 16 and how old now?
16 and 17.
16 and 17. And are they still, have they healed their guts? Are they feeling a lot better?
It's funny because going through what we did through, I had no idea that you could actually reverse all these things and then introduce the foods again one day.
Wow.
So I mean, as a teen, how do you stop them from eating pizza and everything with their friends? They can eat these foods and they totally self-moderate. Now their only repercussion, if they go out too often and have those treats, they'll break out. And that's the big incentive. Oh, let me cut back. Look in the mirror, right? So no, I totally trust them. They're educated. We've shown them documentaries. They manage their own foods. I mean, fast food for them is shawarma.
Shawarma is fast food, and at least that's got some real whole foods in it.
Yeah, made right on the spot.
That's right. I think it's amazing. Again, it's a real opportunity for growth when these things come into our lives that at the onset we think, I don't want this. I don't want this diagnosis. I don't want to have to revamp my whole life. I don't want my child to have to feel like they can't eat whatever and have that ease. And yet when we start to look at it a bit and peel back the curtain, we really realize this is a real opportunity. This is a chance for our whole family to up level.
That's exactly it. I mean, I was that mom back then when they were really severe with their symptoms, and we went to birthday parties still, right? But I would bring them, homemade pizza and homemade cupcake. I knew that was safe for them, and I was adamant back then. And at those times, you feel isolated, you feel alone, and it's not forever. It felt like a long time, but looking back, it was just a blip. And we got past it, and now their diets have expanded, their appetites, they can eat a wide variety again and not have those horrible symptoms we were seeing.
And you say it's not forever, but it kind of is forever, meaning the benefits of it all get to take them through to the rest of their lives. I just imagine these boys at 16 and 17 continuing to get older. As they continue through their lives, they're going to just know so much more about food. The fact that they're self-moderating and saying, I don't want to have a breakout because there's that dance that weekend or whatever kids are doing. We're going to that place. I don't want to have a breakout. I think that's amazing intel for them.
Yeah, completely. And you're right, nothing is forever. But when you learn this one step at a time, you can't ever unlearn it. So you just don't want to go back. Mm-hmm. And then your taste buds do change. If we're out or we're traveling or at our friends and we eat something else that's processed, you're like, ugh. You just can't, because your taste buds are now at a whole other ball game, right?
Totally. I feel the exact same way. Junk food just doesn't taste good anymore. Once in a while, I get it, but not for every day. So the whole message here is real whole foods as much as possible, taking out allergens, when necessary, and then maybe being able to reintroduce those foods after the gut has been healed. And that takes a different amount of time for everybody.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Everyone's completely different.
Yeah.
One of my boys bounced back faster than the other. I remember that, getting allergy tests back, and it was like all just down to nothing. And he was like, he got it. He really got it. What a better way to educate him than actually living through it. And now he's set for life in his food choices.
It's amazing. You're an amazing mother.
Thank
You're
you.
an amazing practitioner. Thank you for what you do. How can people find more about what you do?
Sure. I've got a website, Allergies and Me. I consult. I meet people all over the city, and I also work at 2 clinics in Canada.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here and sharing with us.
Thank you.
What an incredible transformation for your entire family. When we come back, I'll share my final thoughts. Back in a moment. If we choose to believe that everything happens for us and not to us, perhaps we can see a food allergy diagnosis as an opportunity for growth rather than a reason to despair. Seen this way, we can use the allergy experience to empower and educate ourselves towards a much healthier lifestyle, which we may not have otherwise been inspired to do. As my guest highlighted tonight, using a diagnosis as the impetus for change may just turn out to be the best thing that could happen to you or your family. Creating a plan that doesn't feel overwhelming is key, and the exciting news is that we may not even be required to avoid triggering foods forever. Once we heal the gut, there is a good chance of being able to safely reintroduce the offending food later on. No matter what, the entire experience, if we choose to see it this way, can provide the perfect opportunity to up-level our whole lives the way Lori and her family did through the foods we choose to nourish ourselves and our families with. In a society where poor food decisions are the #1 cause of death, those dealing with allergies are really at the forefront of what's going on in our food supply, and in this way play a leading role in demanding improvements all along the food supply chain. Until next time, I want you to remember one thing, that no matter where you are, and no matter how it feels, you are never, ever alone. See you next time.